Welcome back to the Compassionate Capitalist Show. I am, I'm excited about the topic that we have today, and my particular guest. Not surprising, India is the second most populated country in the world, and it's one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And decades ago, the U.S. began outsourcing R&D, IT, call centers, all these kinds of things. And you have a natural evolution of a next gen that's gaining experience in corporate settings, the value of innovation, the spark of entrepreneurism gains ground. And according to the Indian Times digital publication, both central and state governments make great efforts to support the growth of startups in India, which will boost the economy, even establishing R&D facilities in India, allowing new entrepreneurs to start their companies in special economic zones. Their hurdles are not unlike those we see in the US and similar markets, hiring qualified employees, the complexity and the variety of government policies, inexperience with marketing strategies, and funding. Today, we're going to learn firsthand about one of the organizations that is solving these problems, Venture Garage. My special guest on the Compassionate Capitalist Show is Vivek Kumar. Welcome to the show, Vivek. I'm going to give you a little intro here, but I'm really excited that you're going to be my guest today.
Thank you, Karen. I'm really happy to be here, and I look forward.
Yeah, so good. So let me tell you about Vivek. Am I saying your name correctly? Make sure I want to say that
Yes,
correctly. I
yes,
thought I thought
yes,
so,
yes.
but I didn't want to go the whole show and not doing that. So anyway, after careers in research and analytics, consumer marketing, retail, having been an online entrepreneur and investor for some time, Vivek co-founded the Venture Garage. He spends most of his time working with founders of early stage businesses and startups and fundraising, charting out roadmaps to scaling and raising capital. At Venture Garage, they handhold, not unlike in the US. You've heard of incubators and accelerators. It's very, very similar. We're going to learn all about it because to me, one of the best ways to not just read about it, but hear about it from somebody that's in the middle of making it happen. And it's really exciting, all the things they got going on over at Venture Garage. So let me tell you some a little bit more. I just sort of had to do a little sidebar there because of my enthusiasm here. So they help help with early stage companies raising capital, giving them working hands on to help grow them to be successful from 0 to 100 million, right? And they raise capital from a network of over 2,000 investors. Their network includes VCs, high net worth individuals, family offices, strategic investors, corporations, angels, and seed investor that invest between 50,000 and 15 million in their seed to series A and B rounds. So, wow. Again, welcome. So, tell me a little bit about your experience, your journey. Growing up or living in India, experiencing this spark of entrepreneurism, and your own journey to go from being the entrepreneur seeking capital to being a person that it provides the capital directly yourself, but also through your network.
Right. No, thank you, Karen. Thanks for that generous introduction. To tell you a brief about my journey. So, I used to be in corporate life for 10 years uh, with a company called AC Nielsen. They're in a marketing research company. Uh, and, after 10 years, I felt, let me do something on my own. So in 2007, I started a retail analytics company.
Okay.
We used to do analytics and pricing models for good clients like McDonald's, Walmart, Nike, etc. Uh, that company I managed to sell around 2011. That's how I got into the startup ecosystem. I went through that journey, and I really liked that journey. So in 2012, I just promptly jumped into another startup, which was in the e-commerce space. Uh, that scaled up. Then 2014, I did another startup, which was in the SME networking. It was a network of small and medium enterprises. It was a services network. So that's been my journey. In between, I did a couple of other smaller startups. Some of them worked, some of them didn't work. Uh, but in this journey, I got very interested. In fact, I must say, infatuated by this early stage journey of startups. how to get a startup from zero to $100 million became that really became my passion, because I felt that one of the biggest issues which a startup was, you know, the way a startup was approaching fundraise, and that's the way I did it, by the way. To be very frank, that's exactly what I did for myself. Was let me raise money at X today, then I will raise money at 10x 1 year from now, and maybe 100x another year from now. That's how a startup imagines fundraise.
Yeah.
That happens 1 out of 100 times probably. It's a very, very rare happening,
Yeah.
right? 99% will go through some sort of a journey in their fundraise, which is not necessarily a straight line. It is a line which goes all over the place, right? And what we feel that one of the biggest gaps which, and where startups go wrong, is they raise capital and then they almost drop out of the fundraise journey. So investors get so much inflow that they also lose connect with the startup. Now suddenly when you go back into the market 1 year later trying to raise capital, you have to again start from scratch. And
Yeah.
sadly, if in that and sadly if in that journey you've had a bad patch, then you just lose everybody.
So true.
So what we want to do and what we are really doing here is to build a journey for our startups, right? So we identify startups at relatively early stages. So in a typical year, we would scan about 2,000 startups, choose two every month, and then we are happy to invest ourselves. We have an angel network as well, from where we can invest in early rounds up to about $500,000. And then we want to work with the startup in to stay in continuous touch with at least a set of investors who are relevant for us. So typically when I talk to, let's say, a larger investor, he might come back to us and say, I like this, but this is relatively early for us. We want to look at it 6 months later or 1 year
Oh,
later.
sure.
Now the challenge with the founder is he'll drop the ball because he's so busy in building his business. We just ensure that we are sending the fund a monthly update with the right metrics. So we are keeping the right guys warm,
Yeah.
and we are raising capital along the journey. We are not always waiting for a larger round to happen. So there are always smaller investors along the way who show interest, right? So today, if I'm talking to, let's say, even if I'm trying to raise a $10 million round, there might be somebody who's willing to put in $1 million. Now I'm in constant touch with that guy, and if he becomes ready, then we just try and figure out how to bring that $1 million into the company, so that one option is to raise 10 million in one shot, one option is to raise 2 million over a 6 month period or a 9 month period or a 1 year period, right? Sometimes that is a bit more time consuming, but the probability of that happening is a lot higher,
Yeah.
right? So that's broadly what we are enabling for all our startups now. So
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting about that is, how you kind of people get into patterns and behaviors. And I think, a lot of people think, consider the US a real start I guess I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but like innovation and idea of angel investors and venture capital and all that kind of stuff is something that has been, in our ecosystem, if you will, for decades, right? From the 70s, really the 60s and 70s, when a lot of the technology was coming on, and you have the famed startups of, Apple and Microsoft, and those kind of things. And so they sort of, they established their lanes. You had angel investors and venture capital, and exactly as you say, where they put the startup money comes in, and then they may or may not get that next round of capital.
yes,
But
yes,
most of the incubators and most of, like, our process here is they graduate out, they get some money, and, like, kind of like, go, okay, go off and make your way in the world, entrepreneur, and good luck, right? And you have the benefit of not being in that sort of structure, that kind of, here crowdfunding is disrupting that kind of business model of how startups get funded or how startups grow. Here because what that system had been very secret in a way, not the thing that your average person knew about. And startups sort of, try to figure it out. And it was sort of like you got a secret handshake and a special code, right? And I think it's just wonderful that you were able just to look at it and like the true innovation in a funding process that says, we're going to find these companies that we see based on our experience and our network of people that have this potential, the opportunity, this stuff. You've got great experience in market analytics and research and pricing and things like that you can apply to it, to look to it. But because you're along the journey, you can ensure the success of your early investment because you're chaperoning, let's say, the company through the process of getting those future rounds to increase the odds of success. I've often wondered why the angel investor community in the US didn't do more of it. Now some of them do because just the nature, like in Silicon Valley, they have a little bit more of that. But when you have them in other communities, Atlanta in particular, where I am, it is that. It's like your kids got graduated from college and they're gone. Like, okay, good luck. See you at Christmas. And so, right. So tell me about sort of, because of that way you told me when we were talking earlier, what, 2,000 companies you review to get to two that you like. So that's
Yeah.
a high level of scrutiny. And you're not just helping companies in India, you have companies in Singapore and in
Singapore
other places. So
and
so let's just like jump right in and say what's the difference of those two and the 1998 that you choose not to look, to chaperone
so
through this process.
by the way, it's two a month, so we do about 25 in a year out of those 2,000.
Yeah, but still,
But
that's even,
one
oh,
of us,
25. Oh, okay. I'm sorry,
uh,
2004 a year and two a month.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good. Thank you for
So
clarifying that.
roughly, but that's about 1%. And in fact, we do not believe that that ratio will improve. So we believe that for us to get to 40 companies, we'll probably have to scan 4,000 startups. So that's the nature of startups, right? It's critical to figure out the how do you define quality of a startup, right? So essentially, see, there are obviously you're looking for founders with great pedigree in terms of either deep domain understanding or in terms of coming from a very high great education, for example. So some sort of pedigree is what we are obviously looking at from the founder right at the early stage. The other thing we are looking at is that are they in a good space? Are they in a space which will potentially become large in the next 3 to 5 years? So we are essentially looking for sunrise, if I may use that word, spaces which are becoming large and which have very high rate of growth. Our biggest trade secret, and I think that's the critical thing to look at, is to look at the likely pace of growth of a company. So a startup, essentially the difference between a business and a startup is really that a startup is able to show spectacular rate of growth. So if you're going to do regular rate of growth, then you pretty much like a business, you will not raise capital. If you're going to do 10% year on year for 5 years, you can build a good business and a profitable one, nothing wrong with that. But that is not going to raise capital. What will raise venture capital is something which will grow 10% month on month for the next 5 years, right?
Right, right.
That kind of growth is what you're looking at. So we're essentially looking at people who potentially can deliver that kind of growth in sectors which potentially can grow at that pace. That's the way we typically look at a startup. Obviously, we are looking at the founders being referred to us. We want them to come with strong enough referrals from people we've done work with, like maybe existing investors or our earlier startup founders, uh, because that's probably one of the core things in a startup, especially at an early stage, right? uh, Typically for a startup to let's say become large, they probably have to go through multiple changes, right? I believe that a startup which hits a series A has gone through at least two near death experiences, maybe more, but at least two near death experiences where you believe this is it, yeah, we're packing and going. So, the founder, then it all comes down to the founding team to be able to get out of that phase, right? And that's why the founder becomes so critical to the
Yeah.
whole process. But
So
that's
it's
broadly essentially what we are looking at.
yeah. So that's not unlike, kind of every angel investor group or venture cap. They all want those startups that have quality. The team is always really really critical, and they always do look at like market segment and the innovation and things like that. So that's interesting. But I think there, what you said there about like the near death experiences of a company hitting an obstacle that they're like, oh, we're done for, whatever. That fortitude, that sort of like, the fire in the belly, the ability to not give up. That's hard to identify.
Yeah, yeah.
And I get,
You
you
know,
start to see it when now. How long has Venture Garage been working with? How long
we've
have
been
y'all been going
so
through
we've been
this?
around for 5 years.
Okay.
You know, and one of my there what I've seen is that, see, so I think, though we if we go to a coach, he'll talk about balance in life, and you know I think startup founders are possibly dysfunctional people. I'm using that word in
Yeah.
the right sense of it. But essentially the point I'm trying to make is, if you're almost not dysfunctional about what you are doing, if you're almost not crazy about what, see, I think
So
it's
not
whether
obsessed.
it is,
Not
if
upset.
you're
Not
not
obsessed.
obsessed.
They got to
Yeah,
have some
I
kind
think,
of balance.
yeah, much beyond if you're not obsessed, if it is not obsessive for you, then it is not going to work.
Okay.
Then it so that's what we are looking at. So is the
Oh.
founder pretty much crazy? Is he almost crazy?
Okay.
Is
Okay.
he,
So they are
is
obsessive.
he,
They're like a Bill Gates. Well, he
yeah, yeah, they're like
probably
obsessive.
Steve Jobs is a better example
Yeah,
where they're willing to just do whatever it takes to
yeah,
pursue this vision, this dream that they have, and they'll put off. So that's part of the probably the
yeah.
evolution that you see that the entrepreneurs need to go through, is that because the person that's a startup founder that has that obsession, right? So they are obsessed with their get making this happen. But at some point, corporations have to change. And as we saw, with Steve Jobs and Apple, that obsessive nature of the CEO sometimes you need to then put a CEO or modify or
Yes.
coach them to become more of a leader that cultivates and has the ability to delegate and the ability to create a team, and not they have to turn a switch in their head. So 5 years into it, now you've got some companies that are 5 years old, and if they've been on track, they're well into multiple millions of dollars in revenue, you know
Yes.
10, 20, $30 million of revenue, and large organizations. So how do you help them navigate that sort of switch they have to make in their leadership style or their this part of it, because you're chaperoning them through this process and you're trying to build them to the point that you can sell them in a they're on track to be in $100 million company, right? So talk a little bit about your process of helping them navigate from that obsessive to the traditional sort of,
So,
maybe not even traditional,
which
but
is, which is why we like the 0 to 100 million, because that space is still really driven by obsession. You still
okay.
have not got into a situation where you have very large. Most of our companies will still have at max 50 people, 70 people. Till the 100 million mark, they've still not got into hundreds or thousands of people. But two or three things which we see, because putting a team together is super critical, right? For the founder, because the founder is obsessive, they tend to want to do everything themselves.
Yeah.
So along the journey, what we are trying to do with our founders is to ensure that they are able to bring in people who who obviously are not obsessive because they're probably there for a job and whatever, but are good people, are people who are, who are good in their functions. Because as a startup founder, you're doing everything, right? You are the head of marketing, you're the head of sales, you're the head of this, and you're the head of everything, right? To finally start bringing in talent who, which actually can can lead those verticals, because that's when you are now set for growth. So when we go to a venture capitalist for a larger round, that's what he starts looking at. Do you have a team in place who can then now scale it to the, like you rightfully said, like the corporate level, right? Can you now make it $1 billion enterprise, right? So though we don't actively, we typically get out at the 100 million, roughly in that region. But one of the big things is putting together that second rung team of people, who probably will become loyal. So we ensure that all our startups, 100% of them have a generous ESOP pool, right?
Oh, okay.
Anywhere between 5 to 15% ESOP pool uh, we will carve out at the early stage, so that we can bring in talent. Now when we become valuable, then even if we can give small amounts of equity to key positions, we have the power to now retain them, right? So those sort of things, the idea is to ensure that we can get in a good set of people who may not have the same passion as the founder, but at least have that kind of skill set or the talent to at least be there with the founder and take it
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
it beyond the early stages.
So I know that you have a you're for everybody that's listening here. Let me tell you this real quick. Venturegarage.in. Venturegarage.in is the website for this, for Venture Garage in India. They you have an application process online, right? Where people can submit to. I know you get referrals, but when you get people that are do they, this volume of deals that you review, is there an online process? It seemed like I saw that.
So yeah, so there is an online, they can send us an email. There is an email ID. You can send an email to me as well. I'm at Vivek, Vivk @venturegarage.in. Uh, so we have a team of about 5 people who will then go through a lot of the deals which we get. Uh, but try to come to us through a referral. Go on my LinkedIn, you will know somebody. I have a large
Sure.
number of connections on. Get to a referral, because that helps us, reach out to you better and get a better lead into
Yeah.
you.
Because
But you
I,
can go ahead and send us
well,
an email as well.
yeah, because I was that aspect of the obsessive of entrepreneur, like the founder has this characteristic. It seems like, and tell me if this is the case, that you have to somebody has to have a conversation with them. You can't tell that on paper
Yeah.
necessarily, right? I mean, they can get, there's a certain level, like you said, the education and maybe other experiences that they had. So do you lead first with the, like your team when they're screening? It's the idea, the marketplace. Oh, this is a clever new thing. Oh, we're watching these trends, and there's a first level pass, and then there is an element of, because to me that's you. I can't tell. A big part of my due diligence services and the screening services that I do for investors, that I did for my angel investor group for so long, it is that coachability. It's
Okay.
this combination of, are they really, really not arrogant, but they're incredibly confident and bold and all this, but also a level of humility that says they're obsessed with their dream, but they also recognize they don't know what they don't know. And so they're willing to listen at least to people to see,
Yes.
oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that
Yes.
makes
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
And that's a hard characteristic to sort of pick to figure out without, a conversation. So is that
Without a
kind of,
con. Yeah. Yeah, completely. You see, though it looks opposites, actually it is not, right? Because if you're obsessed with, let's say, a problem you're addressing, you're so obsessed with solving that problem or achieving that, or whatever, achieve that opportunity, that you as a person are almost secondary to your obsession, right? So then the coachability comes in, because you are so, you are happy to listen to everybody, right? Most of our founders will, you want to talk to them on their startup, they will talk to you. They may not take your advice, but they will 100% talk to you. They will try to also get feedback from you. And the reason that is because, the reason that is because, like I said, they're so obsessed with what they are wanting to do, and wanting the success, that achievement is so big that for them, their ego sometimes is secondary. And you're right, it is, I think, more than arrogance, it is stubbornness. Na? I think a founder needs to be
Okay.
stubborn than arrogant. I think arrogant is possibly the wrong word. Stubbornness is probably right?
Okay.
It is, see, again, I think a lot of principles go against startups, right? So, your corporate will talk about a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, right? A startup is, that's the plan, right? There is no
Yeah.
B, C, D, E, F, right? When you get into a startup, you have, in a way, burn your bridges, right? So one of the things which you would soft things which you would look at is, sometimes we have come across a very really good founder with great credentials, but the attitude he comes in with is, okay, let me do this and see if it works. I'll try this for a year. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to a good job. I anyways was doing a great job,
Right.
making $200,000 a year. I will go back to another job, another 200,000, back to a $200,000 job a year if this doesn't work. If I don't raise capital, some people will tell us in their conversation, if I don't raise capital, I will go back. No, nothing wrong with that. But see,
That's not the fire in the
that's
belly.
how that, see, we are looking for somebody who's burnt their bridges, right? Because, see, I think a man, almost like, if you have that kind of dream or that kind of, you will not be denied, right? We need that kind of obsession.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and if you're coming in with, okay, if this doesn't work, I will do this, or if this doesn't work, I will do this, then you the chances of that working are low,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So,
So
we talk all about all positive and great stuff, but it's always helpful for my listeners of the Compassionate Capitalist show to hear about a lesson learned. So something you made a decision, based on all that you had and didn't anticipate this, that, or the other, and or hindsight, you're like, oh man, I should have realized that, and made a different decision or whatever. Do you have a lesson learned from your experience starting up the venture
I
garage in the
think,
last 5 years? You're like,
I think I
put you
learned
on the
three
hot
lessons a
seat.
day. I I think I learned, I learn three a day and probably say sorry 10 times a day. So,
Yeah, okay, good.
that's what my life revolves around. So,
Good, 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 good.
you know,
Yeah.
uh, there is but I feel that it comes down to investing in the founder. It comes down to, has the founder got the right attitude? Now that's a tough nut to crack, but finally that's what we have to get better and better at. Everywhere, I think, where we have gone wrong, right? Like, we've lost startups where the co-founders have fought with each other.
Okay.
For example, the single biggest reason for startup loss is actually the co-founders fighting with each other, not the fact that they couldn't raise capital or whatever, right? The single biggest reason. So that's a stunning thing,
Interesting.
right? That
Yeah,
it actually comes
it's
down
true.
to, so, we, for example, I ensure that I'm talking to my founders a lot. So I'm trying to keep all my communication channels open. That, is there any red flag? Because before a red flag hits a business, actually the red flag hits the mind of the founder. So can and I think that's been my biggest lesson, that I've realized that I need to spend, the more time I spend with the founders, the more I'm able to succeed, because I'm able to, if there is red flag right up front, if I can get red flag, if, okay, this is something which is dangerous, and if I feel that the co-founders seem to be not working with each other, then let's figure out how to make that go right. maybe one of them needs to move out, and which is okay, right? Because the startup is bigger than everybody, right? So to that extent, you have to ensure that the teams, because finally it comes down to that founder who has that kind of resilience uh, to make it work.
Sure.
I've seen
Sure.
I've seen startups which should have, in India we had a lockdown of almost 1.5 years, right? I have startups in my portfolio who should have died, for all logical reasons. Like I have a startup which is building cinema screens in tier two towns of India. You know, for 2 years, cinema screens were closed and shut in India, right? Now imagine as a startup getting into a period where for 2 years your business is shut down. You don't know whether it will open or not, and you're a fledgling startup, right? For all practical reason, it should have shut down. But the founder is so obsessed that I don't know how he managed to keep it alive. And I've learned with these guys, they have magic.
That's
You know,
great.
when I put him in front of an investor, when the investor gets mesmerized, if I may almost use that word, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They are able to communicate that passion or that obsession to such an extent that for them raising capital is actually not an issue. So we are basically trying to figure out, rather than trying to groom the guy to raise capital, we're just trying to search for that guy who we believe has the right material,
Yeah.
and if I can put him in front of an investor, then it works,
Okay, good.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another way to look at it.
Yeah. So in the few minutes that we have left, this is something that is on every investor's mind, every startup or early stage company. We're looking at a real economic turmoil. And like you said, we've gone through it the last couple of years, but we have a lot of impact of fluctuating capital markets, things like that. Is there anything that you're watching closely, anticipating, preparing for, when it comes to international, non-US based businesses and this, the nature of our worldwide, inflation or whatever ends up happening, it's, I don't think, one thing I know is that it's hard to predict what's going to happen with the
No, no,
economy
what's gonna
because we've had so many factors affecting it. But what is it, anything that you are like, well, this is how we're preparing for, in anticipation of that, when we're shoring up our entrepreneurs, when we're talking with our investors, kind of what are you hearing? What's a couple of points you can leave with our audience
So,
about that?
yeah, see, one of the critical things earlier used to be we were happy if a startup had a a runway of 9 months, maybe 12 months. Now we are working with all our startups to ensure we at least have 18 to 24 months of runway.
Of
So,
capital, the
so we are
capital, so that
capital,
to
yes,
sustain.
capital
Oh,
to survive.
okay,
So
good.
typically earlier, because earlier we were confident we'll raise money in 6 months or 9 months, right? So even if you had 9 months of capital, we were okay. But now we are trying hard to ensure that all our startups are at least 18 months, maybe if not 24 months of runway. So we've raised additional capital, though we didn't need the capital, we've raised additional capital so that we can build an additional 6 months of runway, 9 months of runway. Uh, so that's one of the big things which we are actually
Okay.
trying to implement in all our startups. That we want them to have a longer runway. The other thing, we have one strategic change which we have now started doing is, you know, uh, it's a slightly controversial thing, but we are staying away from much. We believe that if the next 1 or 2 years are very, are unpredictable, we are actually looking at very, very young startups who will go beyond those 2 years. So the way we are thinking of this is, let's get a very early stage. You see, so therefore we are trying to stay away from late stage companies to some extent, because probably if things go south, then these late stage startups will bear the brunt of it. Early stage, if we can get an early stage guy with a 2 years of runway, then he will probably go through that phase, survive that phase. And
Sure.
if he survives that phase and comes out the other side, then I think they will become
Yeah.
super valuable.
Sure, lean. They're like,
Right?
it's the true definition of the lean startup because it takes a year or so to really get your product fully functional and
Yes.
figure these things out. why not do it when you don't have 70 people versus trying to bring out a second product or something like that during that time? Totally makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, anything you'd like to add to as we wrap up here? Anything did you go, oh, I wish I had shared this or?
No, I think I've shared this one, but the final thought I want to leave with all, if startup founders are listening to this is, you know, focus on your rate of growth. The single largest factor in a startup is the potential rate of growth, and the better rate of growth you can work with, the easier it is to raise capital. All VCs are most excited with your rate of growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've been listening to some of the seasoned angel investors and venture capitalists and stuff, and they love it when there's this kind of economic turmoil in a way, because we've had some sort of fat and happy periods, and
Yeah, yeah.
part of it is that you get a lot of bloat, and so it'll flush out those that aren't as efficient, that aren't as attuned to their marketplace, and you'll have better companies that come out the other side. But also putting it into that very, very early stage startup is a great place to put your money for a growth factor versus, you know what I
Yes.
mean? It's like it's really a good time to invest in
Right.
startups. So
Yes.
so with that,
Yes.
thank you, Vivek. Onwards and upwards. Been a great, great conversation. And again, everybody, please connect up with Vivek on LinkedIn and venturegarage.in to learn more about them and the different things that they're doing and the programs that they're a part of. Have a
Thanks.
great
Thanks,
day.
Karen. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Bye.